trying to fill the void and mend a broken heart at danishmunchers.com.
Good evening and welcome to the February 15th, 2022 remote meeting of the Greensboro City Council. I'm going to conduct a roll call vote to confirm attendance. Obviously, I am here, Mayor Pro Tem, Mrs. Abuzawader, Mrs. Hightower, Mrs. Hoffman,
Here.
Mr. Holston,
Present.
Mr. Outling,
Present.
Mrs. Thurm,
Present.
and Dr. Wells.
Present.
Thank you. We will begin tonight's meeting with a moment of silence. Thank you. Mr. Outling, would you lead us in the pledge?
To the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. To comply with requirements by the state in regards to Zoom meetings and to provide an optimum experience for the public, council will verbalize motions and council will vote by using an electronic voting agenda management platform. Each member of council must vote unless there is a direct conflict. We do allow and welcome speakers to address council on agenda items. We respect the right for the public to speak about matters of concern that can be addressed by council. Each speaker will be allotted up to 3 minutes. Comments that seem to be intended to incite unlawful behavior will be deemed out of order. Zoom participants are requested to mute their microphones until they are called upon to speak. All participants must remain muted when others have been identified to speak. The meeting host will mute anyone that speaks out of turn. Once an item has been completed, the meeting host will remove speakers for said item from the Zoom call. The City of Greensboro is committed to promoting an environment that is free of discrimination, bias, and bullying. Thus, harassment, words, jokes, actions, or comments based on an individual's sex, sexual orientation, race, ethnic background, age, religion, physical condition, or other legally protected characteristic will not be tolerated. We have a consent agenda for items G1 through G21, which are a grouping of agenda items that are voted on with one single vote to expedite what are believed to be routine and non-controversial items. Any council member may withdraw an item from the consent agenda due to a conflict of interest or for the purpose of voting no. Items removed from the consent agenda for discussion will be placed on the March City Council business agenda. This meeting does include closed captioning. Depending on the length of tonight's meeting, we may take a short recess around 7:30. Item number 20 22-22, a resolution calling for a public hearing for February 15th on the annexation of territory into the corporate limits for the property located at 4618 High Cone Road, 0.73 acres. Michael and Chris Bryant has been continued. Staff has requested a motion to postpone this item to the March 15th meeting without further advertising. Motion?
Move the item.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Mrs. Hightower. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that passes unanimously. This is the time for our presentational items, and I would like to ask council for a little bit of to allow us to go off script a little bit. I became aware of a gentleman who I believe has family here in the gallery today. I was called by Tammy Williamson, who talked to me about the Montford Point Marine people who were located here in the city of Greensboro. And I really found it to be a fascinating story, and it's wonderful that we have heroes among us. And it was important to me that we do this in the month of February, since he was an African-American, and this is Black History Month. Sharon knew him and attended his funeral a few weeks ago. So I'm going to start the resolution, then I'm going to ask Sharon to pick up. Resolution to honor the service and contributions of Montford Point Marine John R. Thompson. Whereas on January 12th, 2022, this community lost one of its outstanding community leaders with the passing of the late John R. Thompson. Whereas the first African-American Marines, known as the Montford Point Marines, were trailblazers with an enduring historical legacy. Whereas President Franklin D. Roosevelt issued a presidential directive, Executive Order 8802, that made it possible for African Americans to join the Marine Corps. And on August 26, 1942, the earliest recruits of the first segregated basic training were sent to North Carolina. Whereas born on September 28, 1925 in Kannapolis, North Carolina, John R. Thompson enlisted in the Marine Corps after high school in hopes of earning a college degree through the GI Bill and cemented his name into history. Whereas Mr. Thompson joined an estimated 20,000 other brave African-American men who trained at a segregated United States Marine Corps camp called Montford Point Camp in Jacksonville, North Carolina. As Black recruits were not trained in traditional boot camps, Mr. Thompson joined the boxing team, became a drill instructor assistant, and was assigned to the Marine Corps Ammunition Company. Whereas Mr. Thompson had to cut trees in a snake-infested swamp to build wooden barracks, which served as a support for the frontline combat Marines. He was involved in the Allied battle in Saipan in the northern Marina Islands of the South Pacific for 2 years. Whereas Mr. Thompson and other Montford Point Marines fought for the right to fight and proved their abilities by serving with distinction during World War II and other battles, yet faced discrimination and racism in a segregated South. He was honorably discharged from the Marine Corps in 1946, whereas the Montford Point Marines began as an experiment and ended up as a cultural and social awakening of racial equity, as the United States Marine Corps was the last military branch of the service to allow enlistment of African Americans. And on September 9th, 1949, the Montford Point camp was deactivated. Whereas after his World War II service, Mr. Thompson attended technical school in Durham, North Carolina, opened a home-based electronics repair business, and in the late 1950s, graduated from the Negro Agricultural and Technical College, now North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University, with an undergraduate and graduate degrees in electrical engineering and industrial education. Whereas upon graduating, Mr. Thompson had a distinguished 30-year teaching career in the Guilford County Public Schools. His longest tenure was teaching technology at Aycock, now Swan Middle School. Whereas on November 23rd, 2011, President Barack Obama signed a law awarding all Montford Point Marines with the Congressional Gold Medal for their personal sacrifice and service to their country during World War II, with Mr. Thompson receiving his bronze replica in a special ceremony in 2012 in Washington, D.C. Mrs. Hightower?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Whereas the original Montford Point Marines with connections to Greensboro, North Carolina, also include Fleetwood Howell, Joseph Dungy, Truman Boone, and William T. Rankin Jr., and other prominent figures include David Dinkins, former mayor of New York City, Arthur Easley, the Pennsylvania State Representative, and Dan Bankhead, the first African-American pitcher in Major League Baseball. Whereas Mr. Thompson is the last founding charter member of the National Montford Point Marines Association of North Carolina, Triangle Triad Chapter 38, an organization that seeks to further strengthen the foundation of local communities and embrace the common bond with other organizations with scholarships, emergency assistance, mentorship programs, workshops, interns, cessation of career opportunities, and stimulate awareness of concerns affecting our communities. And now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Greensboro that the City Council wishes to recognize and honor the many contributions of Mr. John R. Thompson during Black History Month, bring awareness of social justice, highlight unsung heroes, and showcase the tremendous historical impact of Montford Point Marines made in the city of Greensboro in the state of North Carolina, in the United States of America, and worldwide. That a copy of this resolution shall be delivered to the family of the late Mr. John R. Thompson as a symbol of the gratitude of the citizens of the city of Greensboro and the state of North Carolina for his many contributions to this community and beyond. Adopted this the 15th day of February 2022.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by Mrs. Hightower. Council, please vote.
I want to know how.
And that passes 9-0. I know that we do have a speaker by Zoom. Mrs. Tammy Williamson. Tammy, would you like to bring some remarks? And I know that we also have the family here.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilman. I'm just overwhelmed, and I'm thankful and grateful for you all taking the time to acknowledge our Montford Point Marines and Mr. Thompson, who recently passed in January. We're thankful, and if there's anything that or any assistance that we may provide, please don't hesitate to give us a call.
Thank you so much. And we'd like to, Mrs. Hightower, if you and I can deliver them.
Is Mrs. Thompson here?
Yeah.
Ms. Thompson, if you want to come up and receive this resolution and say a few words. I know your sons are with you probably.
Go ahead, Mayor.
We're gonna bring it to you right there. Hey, Ms. Thompson. Mayor's. I'd like to say thank you so much. Sharing your husband and father with us. This is an amazing legacy to your family and to the city of Greensboro. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I suppose I can only say to the council and to the public, thank you so very much for just being here and honoring him. And thank you for those who came to the last moments. Thank you very, very much. And I hope for each of you the very best in the days ahead. Thank you.
I'd like to say that I met Mr. Thompson with the Teachers Association years ago, but then Mrs. Thompson was she's been a faithful member of the Environmental Justice, CEEJ. Yes. So Citizens for Environmental Justice. So you have my sympathy. But thank you for all of the things that you have done behind the scenes and wonderful things that your husband did for our country. Thank you.
And so, Ms. Thompson, I just want to tell you, I've been to your house and sit and talk and we call each other all the time, but, I was saddened to see, hear about Mr. Thompson. He was such a fine gentleman in 96, was it? 96 years of young, right? The older we reach those father ages, the younger we become. But thank him for his service to the United States, to our state, and to our community. He's an Omega, so let's don't leave that out. I know he was proud of that as well. But I really enjoyed knowing him and meeting him, and we will continue to talk, but thank you for sharing his life with us as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is recognition of the 2021 Employee Innovation Award winner honorees. Mr. City Manager.
Mayor, actually, and council members, I'm going to start this one off tonight. Tonight, we celebrate our annual Employee Innovation Awards. These will be for calendar year 2021. This is our 5th annual awards presentation. We celebrate our employees who use creativity and ingenuity to solve problems and save money and just come up with new ways to do business better. This program is administered by and coordinated by Budget and Evaluation, and our budget director, John Decker, is here to introduce a video to you that's going to highlight and show our 5 winners that we are celebrating tonight.
Thank you, Larry. Mayor, members of council, I appreciate your time and recognition of this group of employees. We had we had 28 applications from across the city organization for projects that had an impact on our operations and the community at large. By far the largest number of departments that we've seen participate thus far. So we've had over 15 departments participate, and we had a great video put together with our team at GTN to help give you an overview of what some of those projects were and the winners and those that we're recognizing tonight. But I want to thank you and thank all the employees for their great ideas.
Since 2017, the City of Greensboro and community partners have honored city employees who use creativity and ingenuity to solve problems, save money, or positively change the way the organization does business. This year, city departments submitted projects for consideration in the 2021 Employee Innovation Awards. Here are the winning projects. Corporal Norman Looper won the Innovation Award and a $2,500 prize for the Safe Greensboro Innkeepers Alliance.
The program is a crime prevention initiative based off of partnering with hotel, motel, and extended stay establishments to help them lower the calls for service and crime at their establishments.
The judges chose a runner-up in the innovation category. Greensboro Youth Council Program Coordinator Jaycia Stevenson and former GYC Chair Iman Khan, a teen and roster city staff member, earned a $500 prize for the GYC's Teen Vent Sessions.
This was an opportunity for them to just get together, talk, actually like vent and be upset and have that space to have that support from others.
Corporal Shatoni Little won the Impact Award and a $2,500 prize for her Jackson Middle School program, Divas by Design.
Divas by Design was created to give middle school girls something to feel good about themselves. And it's mainly an after-school program.
The judges also chose 2 runners-up in the Impact category. Creative Greensboro Finance and Facility Operations Specialist David Cashwell won $500 for creating a JOT form registration system for the city's Office of Arts and Culture.
For this project, I built a suite of integrated online forms that helps our department manage all of its financial activities.
The judges also awarded Energy Management Engineer Sergey Koblev and Facilities Maintenance Supervisor Eddie Holloman $500 for their drone program for energy and asset management.
We are able to use the drone in areas that we would typically use human beings and equipment.
It's perfectly documenting appearance of the defects or possible flaws in the existing building envelope system.
Please join us in thanking these employees for their service to our community.
Thanks again, Council, for your recognition. We have several of the winners and other employees recognized on Zoom joining us tonight. It's just a great opportunity to recognize all the hard work that our employees put in every day to come up with creative and impactful solutions for all the operations in the community we serve. Thank you again.
Thank you. I do believe that we have Shatoni, David, Sergey, and Eddie on the line. I don't know if any of them would like to make some brief comments. We'd love to hear from you and congratulate you on a job well done.
Thank you so much, Mayor and City Council. It's truly an honor to be recognized pretty much just for doing something that I love, giving back to the community and working with the children. Once again, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I do also appreciate what the city has done to allow some creative thoughts to come up with different ways to do things and recognize those folks and for those achievements. So we do appreciate the organization for doing that. Thank you.
Thanks again. Yes. Okay, if there no one else who would like to speak, again, we'd like to thank all of you for a job well done. And we will now move on to the consideration of our consent agenda.
Move the item.
Moved by Mr. Holston, seconded by Dr. Wells. I believe that is usually a verbal vote, Madam Clerk.
I think the screen is up for them to vote, Mayor.
Electronic?
Yes, ma'am.
And that passes 9-0. Thank you. We do not have any public hearing items this evening. There was one that we postponed to next month. We will now move on to general business on our agenda. Item I.1 is a resolution to purchase sale agreement for South Elm West Block. Mr.
Madam
City.
Mayor, I'd like to move that item.
So I hear it's been moved. Who was the second? And it's moved by Mrs. Hightower, seconded by Mrs. Thurm. We do have to have a presentation and we have speakers. Okay. And Goldie. I think everybody will second it at this point. Mr. City Attorney?
Well, said Mr. City Manager. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr.
Evening.
City Manager, sorry.
Not as qualified as Chuck to be the city attorney, but good evening and thank you so much. We do have a presentation from our planning director and staff, but before she does, I want to give a kind of a high level overview of this subject item and just kind of focus on some of the key topics that Sue and Ross will really talk about during their presentation. One is, this is of course about Lidl, a grocery store in a food desert. And pretty much we know about that. But there are certain things that I just want to quickly clarify. Number one, the terms of agreement are not 15 years. It's really 5 years, but 2 1-year renewal opportunity or options that the agreement clearly states shall not exceed 7 years total. And then the parking issue, the purchase and sale agreement also has language that prior to closing, which will be April of 2023, that the purchaser will define details of what the arrangements will be for parking, and there will be a formal agreement that the city will still accept. So we've got enough time to really discuss that. Now, I will acknowledge, and I'll be the first to acknowledge that surface parking lot is not the highest and best use of land, especially of our city's downtown, but it's not just on this lot. We need to look around us, and they're everywhere, downtown Greensboro, and we definitely want to make sure that we will come to you in April at the work session, assess our parking needs, define what the utilization percentage is, and talk about how we move forward in a collaborative fashion with developers, with property owners, with downtown Greensboro, with other stakeholders, and we will be able to together define what the path forward is. I do understand the concern of Lidl having that surface parking lot of about 100 to 150 parking spaces, but tonight is not the end of this conversation with regards to parking. And then lastly, is that while we've been focusing on this lot, the fact is that adjacent to the Union Square campus is a mixed-use development that's been proposed to be there. That will be about 2.5 acres in total, but will also have housing, both affordable housing. I believe 20% will be for those who are 80% of area median income, and market rate will be others. But you also have a plaza as well as some commercial space. So again, we need to not just look at this block, but look at what's going to be happening around it over a period of time. And so in the presentation tonight, you will hear some history of this site, but you also see why having an anchor use at this location can actually be a catalyst to what can happen, not just on that spot, but in the areas immediately around it. And again, we should continue to think more about how do we address the issue of surface parking going forward. But tonight, we're asking you to take a decision based on the Redevelopment Commission's recommendation on the purchase and sale agreement. And we've got months in front of us to be able to iron out some of the other details formally. So Sue, I'll punt over to you to make the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Thank you, Councilwoman Hightower. Just wanted to give you a little overview of where we're at. Since not everyone, there's been a lot of discussion about South Elm, but where is it? So it is the area defined in the green boundary, the green line, the complete area that the city manager just outlined for you, a total of 10 acres in that redevelopment area. But we are talking about tonight, the project site or the 3 acres on the west block. It's helpful to know why we're there. This is not a typical real estate transaction. It's not a typical plan. This redevelopment area, before it was a redevelopment area, was a prime industrial area in Greensboro. Since 1896, more than 125 years, this had been a prime space for printing, for fuel, for coal, for automobile repair, and for other high-intensity industrial uses. But then things started to change, and our attention as a city came to this corner first when the baseball proposal as a stadium was originally proposed down here. But in doing that due diligence for the property acquisition, it was discovered about the brownfields and the contamination from that industrial past. The city was successful in securing 2 brownfield grants, one for testing and one for remediation. We began a redevelopment process by North Carolina redevelopment law, and it was declared a blighted area. The community advisory team that was assembled for this was very different from most projects in the city's past. It went beyond just the immediate area, but the adjacent neighborhoods from Wernersville over to Goral Street, down to Arlington Park, up through the northern parts of downtown. Through that work, the redevelopment plan was adopted in 2007 and implementation began. I felt it was important to put this up because we often hear, well, what has happened? Because you can't quite see it. But there's a whole lot of work that had to occur before we could even get to this site and a developable piece of land, between buying property, tearing down structures, doing the testing, developing the remediation plan, getting that approved by the state, actually executing it, and then getting a final clearance from the state, or in a master, I shouldn't say clearance, a master brownfield agreement. Through an RFP process, a master developer was selected and an agreement was signed. Union Square campus, the first component in the redevelopment area, was open in 2016. So this project is supported by several adopted city plans. The redevelopment plan itself is reinforced by our newly adopted comprehensive plan, GSO 2040. It is supported by our fresh food access plan, and also recent public input. Last summer, staff conducted informal focus groups with the neighborhoods in the area about the innovation corridor. And although there was a lot of support for things like broadband and other aspects of that innovation corridor, the need for a grocery store came into those conversations as recently as just 6 months ago. So these are all facts, and you can read them, of how this project fits in with the redevelopment plan. I think one of the most important ones that rereading the plan that reminded me, the first one, forging connections to neighborhoods east and west of the planning area as well as downtown. I was asked to touch on the fact of sometimes it feels like these are in conflict with each other. And it's true that in adopted planning plans and other policies, sometimes they don't easily dovetail with each other. We did look, as we were approached from Lidl, for a full-size grocery store, not a 15,000, but a 30,000 square foot grocery store in a food desert, that it impacted more than the redevelopment area downtown, but the neighborhoods that we have worked with for literally decades, who have been wanting and needing the basic right to have food in their neighborhood and access to it. So that is what led, in working with Lidl, it was a legitimate offer for staff to move forward a recommendation and those considerations by the Redevelopment Commission. So Russ, I'm going to turn this over to Russ, who's going to talk about the purchase and sale agreement, and hopefully if you have any questions, we'll take those at the end.
Thank you, Sue, and good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Tonight, we are asking your approval of the purchase and sale agreement between the Redevelopment Commission and Lido US to construct and operate a grocery store at 734 South Elm Street. This agreement includes the terms and conditions for the eventual sale of the property. If those terms are met, the sales will go forward as described in the agreement. Those terms include the description of what will be built, the time frame for moving forward, the price, the property under consideration, what is required prior to closing, and the duties and responsibilities of each party. The Redevelopment Commission voted unanimously to support the sale at their meeting on February 2nd. In the development program in this agreement, Lidl would like to purchase the property to build and operate a full-size grocery store of between 25,000 and 36,000 square feet with sufficient parking for the site to include at least 100 to 150 parking spaces. As Ty mentioned, completion must come 5 years after closing with an option for 2 extensions of up to 1 year. I won't go over each of these documents, but these are the exhibits to the agreement. Most of these were developed under the Master Development Agreement and Guide Development on both blocks of the redevelopment plan. If approved, our next steps include legal reviews of the due diligence materials and the deposit of earnest money. Prior to closing, the Redevelopment Commission will review elements including the layout and the design. We'll have an agreement on parking arrangements, and we will have a detailed schedule for construction phasing. Before closing, the South Elm Development Group will release their option to buy the property as allowed in the Master Development Agreement. If we proceed according to schedule, taking the fully allowed time without any extensions, we will be at a closing on the property in April of 2023. And at this time, I would like to ask that Grant Whitaker and Rich Jordan of Lido US introduce themselves. to you
Russ,
all.
just real quickly,
Yes, ma'am.
your last comment said closing at April of 2023. So the 5 years actually starts April of 2023.
It would start when we close, and that's an approximation of when that would be. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Grant Whitaker. I'm a real estate manager for Lido US. I work with North and South Carolina in our expansion and site selection efforts. My colleague next to me is Richard Jordan, who is Director of North and South Carolina.
Any questions for our speakers?
I do have one quick question.
Mrs. Hightower?
What made you decide to pick this site? It's a great site, don't get me wrong, but what stands out?
Me personally, my favorite thing about the site is the Greenway. I actually live really close to the Greenway, so I actually walk to the grocery store sometimes. I'm close to a Harris Teeter in Charlotte, so I like utilizing that as a resource. So that's my personal favorite thing about the site.
So can we just encourage you, once you close, to kind of get it done before the 5 years?
You can encourage us, yes.
Yes.
And I can tell you, we would be horrible businessmen if we didn't want to provide you guys with a grocery store on that side as soon as we are possible to do so.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Mrs. Hoffman?
Yeah, what's your average of doing this kind of project in terms of your timeline? If you look at the number of projects you do throughout the country, what's your average timeline for completion?
We're not immune right now to all the supply chain issues that the entire country is having. So I know there have been circumstances where you could come in, get a deal done, 18 months later, have a steel box up. There's also deals we've come in and done where we've leased a space out, and that significantly shortens the time frame simply because you already have a freestanding box. One of the issues that we have here is there is extensive brownfields. We want to be as responsible to the environment as possible because that doesn't just affect your city, that also affects our shoppers and our workers. And God forbid we start drilling water and there's stuff in there that we don't know about. We want to make sure that's done, and that does take some time. So in this scenario, having that extra time we can go back, we can see where, hey, there has been research done already, there's been some remediation, but of course, we want the time for our own guys to have a look at it to make sure that is a completely safe site. Because that whole area, it's a wonderfully historical area. We want to keep that intact, but we also want to make sure it's as safe as possible for our shoppers and for the future. So that will alter the time frame in extending this a little bit. I would say that's probably going to be one of our biggest challenges on this. I think once we can actually get our building materials and everything in check and get construction going, that actually leaves real estate hands, which we are, and that goes into our construction hands. And those guys are second to none. I've never seen someone do math as off the top of their head as well as they can. I'm glad it's not me. But once this project gets underway, I don't think, we are asking for some extra time. I don't think it's out of the question that we can't get this completed within that time.
So I did have one other question if nobody else does. And I know you probably saw some of these questions come to you, like things like MWBE, working with some of our local subs when you start construction. That's an important program here at the city that we promote. It's really to help our smaller businesses to be able to grow. So we'd like to see, you work with that program, work with our program here at the city, because I think that's important, particularly in the area that you're going to put this grocery store in. It's going to say really a lot to the community and how they'll be involved in that as well. So I'm throwing that out there at you just because I know you saw it probably in the paperwork and the documents, but just so you would hear from me how important that is, I think, to the community, as well as having a diverse workforce. I think so. How many employees do you expect to have eventually when you get the store up in a couple of years? How many employees do you anticipate?
We will ask our GC to approach the program to ensure that we can maximize working with that organization. So for MWP. And then in terms of workers at the store, we'll have around 30. At the Greensboro site off of High Point Road, we have about 25. So store similar size, we'll have 30 employees there.
And out of that, what do you consider the average salary to be, or the minimum salary?
I believe it was shared in some of the questions that we had previously, but it's $15 an hour starting for our associates.
Which is something we at the city encourage and we promote and support. So.
And it's not just that as well, it's benefits for full-time and then part-time employees as well. Paid volunteer time off.
Great.
A lot of the benefits too.
And one unique thing I can say about Lidl that I think is so fantastic that we do. A lot of stores, when you go and you interview, they say you're going to be a stock boy, you're going to be a produce manager, et cetera, et cetera. We will take our employees because we are not 100,000 square foot box. We are 35,000 square feet max, but it's still a full service grocery store. You're going to learn every single position and you're going to do every position, but that gives you an opportunity to move up within the company. And we absolutely want to encourage vertical movement within Lidl. We love it when we can have someone up in headquarters in the US and DC that says, I started off in Greensboro. I think that's fantastic. I think that's a great program we have and a wonderful opportunity that we offer.
Sounds like a great program.
Thank you.
Be positive for the community, I think. So thank you.
So Dr. Wells, Mrs. Thurm, Mr. Holston. Oh, okay. Mrs. Thurm?
Thank you. I just want to let people know, if they haven't been in Lidl, that we have a Lidl in District 5 that is a beautiful store and is a lot of fun to shop in and smells so good with the fresh bread. I'm just really excited because I know this area will be thrilled with the quality of the store and the people that work at the store. And I just think it's a great thing for Greensboro to have more Lidls in it. So thank you for considering expanding with us.
Thank you. Mr. Holston?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Councilwoman Thurm, I was also by Lidl this past weekend and really did enjoy that. A quick question for you. This is going to be a downtown grocery store. It's going to be, as you indicated, right there on the Greenway. have you thought of any innovations or any kind of creative designs or touches that you plan to add? I know it's early, but I know developers tend to dream and have visions. Anything that you plan that's going to be special for that location?
So there's a lot of good guidelines within the design guidelines that are provided that run with the land for the site already. So we fully intend to utilize those. And then as well, we have bike racks at all of our stores as well. So being that close to the greenway, they're really able to be utilized there. Within the site plan itself, we do have sort of a plaza that's a little larger. That's not typical for most of our grocery stores in most of the areas. So that's good to open that up and make it more inviting for pedestrians too.
Thank you.
The goal is to 100% be a neighbor to the area and a community driver. That is always our goal and our intention. We don't come in to move anyone out. We come in to integrate and help. And I do see Lidl as that. I haven't been with Lidl nearly as long as my colleague Grant here, but when I was offered the role, I jumped on it because it is a very positive and forward-thinking company.
And to that point, oftentimes it's sometimes considered to be either or, but I believe in both. And I believe that with your designs and with your ideas and with the future growth that's coming in that area and for instance, out at on Gate City, Westgate City, I noticed that you have the Lidl there, and then just right in the same complex, you have the Harris Teeter. So it's not as if you're afraid of competition, so to speak, but you tend to go right up and provide your service. So really do appreciate your and your both.
We do fully believe that much in our own product. If you look at my expanding waistline, I'm certainly a big believer in our product offerings.
So Mrs. Abuzawader or Dr. Wells?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just want to say welcome. We'll see how the vote goes, but I think you can pretty much figure how it's going to go. So it's going to be great not only for surrounding communities, but there's a large workforce downtown that when they want to go home and they want to grab something, it's going to be easy to stop by and then go on their way. So I think that's pretty innovative to me, is that you're wanting to locate near a downtown as well, and of course for the downtown, the people that live downtown. But thank you all so much.
Dr. Wells?
Even though I know it's not going to be tomorrow that you'll have the store, but I want to say we've been waiting a long time. I represent District 2, and I've been hoping for the grocery store, and there are 5 or 6 communities that are around that have been waiting for a grocery store for fresh foods. And so I'm grateful that you're coming, and I hope that all the folks who live in the area will be satisfied with what we have there. Thank you so much.
And if I may, I'm so sorry, our managers rarely get the credit that they deserve. My colleague Grant here, his outreach to the city of Greensboro has been second to none with the Redevelopment Commission, and I am so grateful for his work and for everything that he has done up here. I am so excited, and I really hope at opening day, all of you will be there to join us.
We will. Yeah, and I do appreciate all the hard work that went into this. To develop on the redevelopment site is a little special. There are more hoops to jump through. And so we appreciate that you are willing to take that on. And we do have about 12 speakers signed up to speak.
I wanted to say.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Johnson?
I just want to thank you because it's wonderful for me to see us addressing the need in areas where there are food deserts. And sometimes it's very good to see us address that need in an area that most people don't think of as a food desert. But at any rate, I thank you and I'm excited about it. I support you 100%.
And it's great to see a grocery store that's being embraced. We've had other grocery stores that had a bit more difficult. And we do have parts of town that are grocery store rich. So it is really good to be putting it in a food desert. So I appreciate that. We'll move on to our speakers. Our speakers, no, we do speakers first. Our first 3 speakers are Robert Isner, Billy Thompson, and Carl Brower. Okay, thank you. Our next speaker, so we have Billy Thompson, Carl Brower, followed by Andy Zimmerman.
Thank you. I'm Bill Thompson. I live downtown in the 600 block. I'm in agreement with what I've heard so far. I haven't heard any requests for grants. If I missed it, I'm sorry. It's not something I believe in. But it's not just a grocery store, but we also need parking. And that parking to be accessible after hours to support what I believe has become the entertainment center of Greensboro. And I've moved here 2.5 years ago, and it's a huge, very significant jump since I've been here. But parking is inadequate and safe parking. That current parking lot is ripe for people to break into vehicles. So I hope to see the grocery store along with adequate parking for nighttime, and perhaps if there's a way to use the grocery store parking after hours. I don't know what their hours are, but that would be great for a consideration. But really grocery store and parking, especially after hours, to support the downtown nightlife. Thank you.
Thank you. Carl Brower, Andy Zimmerman, Eric Robert.
Good afternoon, Council. I'm Carl Brower. I'm representing the Old Ashboro neighborhood. Bring you greetings from our President B. Akins, also from the Warnersville community, Mr. Griffin, also from Arlington Park, Mr. Alston. We've all gotten together in support of this project. I'm glad with what I've heard today. Strange thing, Ms. Swartz's presentation reminded me how long it's been since I've been working in this area on this particular project. 0506 was Nettie Code. Some of you remember. I don't know if many of you remember the last grocery store in our neighborhood on MLK, Issa's Buy Right. And right after that, the A&P at the end of MLK. It's been a long time.
Too long.
As a lifelong resident here in Greensboro, I'm happy to hear of this project. I'm hoping that we're going to get the votes needed. And to the gentleman from Lytle, we meant what we said about sooner the better. Appreciate you. Okay, I can say that, right? All right, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Carl. Thank you, Carl. Andy Zimmerman, Eric Robert, Sherry Royal.
Thank you, Council. First, I want to welcome Ty and his family to Greensboro. I look forward to working with you to find solutions for all of our needs in downtown, which include a grocery store, affordable housing, mixed-use retail, and parking. I am here to set the record straight, as there are false claims going around that I do not want a Lidl store downtown. I love the Lidl store at Adams Farm Shopping Center. It's very close to where I live. I shop there regularly. I also love the smells that come out of the bakery. And I look forward to having a Lidl store in downtown. I did want more of a holistic development at that site. I have been to the Lidl stores that are part of a development that's not just a Lidl store, that are apartments and parking and mixed-use retail that I think would make that site much more vibrant. Starting back in 2017, I was informed by the Planning Department and Redevelopment Commission that housing had to be part of the site where the Lidl store would like to open. My dealings with the City Planning and Redevelopment Commission have not been favorable about this subject. In fact, I think they have been disingenuous. City planning has not been collaborative. They have worked in a vacuum and have had no accountability for the South End redevelopment plan that was developed in 2006. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on that plan. And I was hoping for more accountability since 2006 for something to happen at that site. My conversations with Ty have been very good. We will now start planning for the good of downtown, not just for the good of one parcel. I have confidence that Ty will take our city and our downtown to another level and hoping for more accountability and actions instead of talk. I did have developed with a private developer a $35 million plan for there to be apartments and for there to be other residential units and for there to be a grocery store at this site. Think of the tax base that would have been created for that plan versus a standalone store. I now embrace the standalone store, and I look forward to having conversations with Lidl, our new city manager, and other interested stakeholders in what this development can be, and hopefully have it transformative for the neighborhood. I realize the need for the food desert and the need for a grocery store. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric Robert, followed by Sherry Royal. And then I think those are all the in-person speakers that we have, and we will switch to the virtual speakers.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council Member, Mr. Manager, welcome. It's supposed to be a photo. Before I start, I just wanted to find out from council if anybody has ever complained about this very large surface parking lot anchoring the north end of downtown. Anyway, a lot has happened in a very short time on a project that we've been talking about for about 20 years. You've witnessed some of the worst in our community, as it included greed, envy, manipulation, but you've also seen some of our best. You've seen a community coming together to support each other for the greater good. You've witnessed neighbors standing together for what is right and just. You've seen diversity at its best, not just racial diversity, but generational and social. You're witnessing people from all walks of life looking out for one another, and God knows we certainly could use more of that. So this reinforces my belief that we have more in common that some would lead us to believe. And this is a perfect example of what is truly great about our little village that we call Greensboro. Talking about community, I am not sure who DGI reached out to formulate its official opinion on what is good for downtown and surrounding communities. All I know is that it wasn't any of the 5 surrounding neighborhoods or other downtown stakeholders. And I belong to both and I've never heard of either. As DGI leaders were obviously distracted, we took upon ourselves and helped them get the job done to find out exactly what the community wanted. So tonight I'm going to give you over 1,200 signatures and comments from constituents. The number is much higher, but considering I had to print them before coming, you don't have all of them, but there's at least 1,200 in this packet. This side is zone central business, and technically, as you know, central business doesn't have to provide its own parking, and yet Lidl is going to provide its own at its expense, unlike other neighbors that actually look to us to pay for their parking lot. So I would applaud them for that, and I think it's really a good thing for the neighborhood. And finally, in the end, it's the positive far outweighs any of the negative, especially for the surrounding communities and the downtown community overall. I mean, this is right versus wrong, health versus wealth, entitlement versus community, and political access versus the typically voiceless. And tonight, the voiceless actually have a voice, and they're here to be represented. So I'm hopeful that most of you will do the right thing tonight and support this great opportunity that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry Royal, I believe, is the last in-person speaking. And then we will move to the virtual speakers.
Mayor, the courier can get his petition.
Goes to the clerk.
Okay.
Mayor and council. I work across the street and I would love to eat lunch over there. And so I'm hoping that there's an eating area, patio, upper deck, something
It's coming.
innovative for excitement from, getting away, even if it's across the street. Also, for innovations, I would suggest maybe a charging station for future use of the golf cars that will be coming soon. That's coming in the future, that we'll have golf cars that will be riding in the area, as well as maybe a charging station for cars in the parking lot so that you could charge up while you're shopping. Parking is a big deal, like everyone else has said. So I was just pointing out the parking is, we've got a nightclub next door. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but they do park up and down the street in that area. And so it's not just during the day, and it's not just during the hours at the Lidl store. So we need to really think about the parking and the other areas that are there. Also, affordable housing in the area would be great. And then the other question that I would have is Lidl actually trains in other places. The one in on Gate City Boulevard has trained in Davidson County, and I'm worried about what type of training will be available for our staff. Even if it's training at the Gate City Boulevard area, that's all the way at the very end of the bus route for persons to go out there. It is on bus route 11, so it does go directly to that store, but training the staff for the Lidl and using area workers, it may be something that would be difficult for some of the workers, and paying the bus route tickets and things like that, and going back and forth, and depending on your hours of operation versus the bus system. And it's just a lot to think about. So they're not just going to be just training just in that store, because the store isn't quite open. But I'm looking forward to innovations, thoughts whenever you're building. And sooner than later. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now move to the virtual comments. The first one is Gerald Lemonstall, followed by Allison Baumgartner. No.
Madam Mayor, those last four on your list submitted comments only.
Oh, thank you. So we
And
have one
council has
speaker,
copies of those.
left. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, City Council, my name is Gerald Lymanstall. I live at 629 South Elm Street. Do I start over now?
Can you hold on one second? Can we
Sure,
bring it up on
sure.
the monitor? Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, folks, and good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. My name is Gerald Lymanstall. I live at 629 South Elm Street. Just happens to be diagonally across the street from the property that we're talking about. I'm responding in support of the proposal that was put forth by the Redevelopment Commission this past week, which is a reiteration of the proposal that they put forth in 2006 At that time, I was on the redevelopment commission, and I served on the commission for 10 years. So I was very familiar with this project. The project, as it was originally designed, begins at Arlington Street on the east side, begins at Gate City Boulevard on the north, and extends to the railroad tracks on the west side. There was a proposal, the original proposal had a major building that was to be built between Arlington Street and South Elm Street, beginning at Gate City Boulevard. That was to have had residential, commercial, and office space together with a parking facility to serve those organizations. So the only thing that's been built in that regard since that time in those particular areas is the facility, which is the joint venture between UNCG, NCANT, and the two hospitals, which is an excellent, excellent project. So that leaves a significant amount of that original property still undeveloped that could handle the issues that have been discussed this evening. The project that is on now for the grocery store is identical in location and in scope I don't know the exact square footage, but that was originally proposed in 2006. And I was very familiar with the research that went into that by the developer, by the organization who was working with a group of citizens on designing the project. And they made sure that they did adequate study to make sure at that time that it was feasible to put a grocery store, a one-story grocery store with its own parking on that site. So what we're seeing
Has expired.
Thank
Thank
you. Is
you.
the potential to reiterate that proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers for this item?
Move to close the public
Madam
hearing.
Mayor, we did have one more
It's just
speaker
a
signed
general,
up.
it's not a public hearing.
We'll close it anyway.
Mr. Otley?
Yeah, I think that this proposal is one that's worthy of support. As many of our community are intimately aware on a personal basis, Greensboro ranks in the top 10 cities in the country for food insecurity. Meaning that many of our neighbors, our friends are unable to readily access food. This project provides for food in a food desert. And as this council and many others in our community are aware, the city has worked on addressing food insecurity in our community for a while, including doing things like paying incentives to grocers to locate into food deserts. Notably, in this situation, Lidl, an international company, is coming to Greensboro, providing food in a food desert, and they're paying over $1 million, no less. I understand and appreciate some of the concerns that have been raised this evening, as well as separately about the lack of parking and the implied critique of this particular project that it does not include public parking. I think that that is a really valid concern. Many people, whether they are coming downtown or elsewhere, they want to be able to park close to their office, close to the places that they're patronizing. But notwithstanding that fact and that reality, I believe that on balance, this proposal is of great benefit to our community. First, as has been noted, this project has been in the work, or the development of this site has been in the work for over 20 years. And so I certainly agree that it would be perhaps even better in an ideal world. Perhaps it would be perfect if this particular part of the city-owned property included things like affordable housing. It also included things like a parking deck. But But it has been 20 years, and many have tried to integrate that into this particular site. And at a certain point, you have to accept the best thing that's in front of you, especially where it addresses really deep community concerns that go to fundamental ability to people to actually eat. Moreover, as the planning director indicated, and perhaps others indicated, this site, this area of the city includes more than just this particular parcel. And there are opportunities for further development of other city-owned lands in those areas in which the hope and expectation will be to address those additional issues, such as parking perhaps, such as affordable housing and the like. And so I appreciate all of the comments made by those who spoke at this meeting as well as elsewhere, recognize the validity of their remarks and concerns, but on balance, recognizing that trade-offs have to be made and progress can be made on important issues like providing food to people who need it across our city. I, as it appears others, intend to support this item. Thank you.
Comments?
So I have a comment. I don't know who else.
Mrs. Hightower?
Sue, and correct me if I'm wrong. Part of that area also contains improvements. I think there were redevelopment with New Zion. Was it?
That's correct. There's,
So it's not just what we see at Union Square. That whole area is like a
Right.
redevelopment area.
that's correct. These actually, South Elm links together north, what we call MLK North, with the northern area of Old Ashboro, that we still have hope for housing developments along there, the New Zion development, and a few other infill projects that will kind of fill in the vacant land around there.
Correct. So the grocery store coming may spur even more interest with the housing piece. We've tried a couple of housing developers and it didn't work out for affordable housing, but we're still trying, and I know that. But redevelopment, for some reason, takes years. I'm not willing to forego a grocery store and a food desert for parking. I think the city manager has proposed a great idea to let's have a work session and talk around parking. And I think that's a great way to go. You think outside the box. But I think right now and here, this needs to be the first consideration that we start with this project and move forward. So it's not just even the people who live downtown that would go and the 5 neighborhoods that would go. It's the people working at A&T that are on their way home, and the people working at Bennett that are on their way home. And it's me cutting out 16 miles to go to Harris Teeter. I just saved gas because now only go 4 miles to a grocery store. So it makes a lot of difference in this area. To make sure, and I'm 100% behind supporting this project. You know, I'm not ignorant of the fact that we need parking, and I think we need to have that discussion. The city manager has proposed that, to have parking and have it in a holistic discussion. But tonight and today, we need to be very positive about the fact that a community that lives in a food desert is being addressed. And that's the most important piece of this for me. So I made the motion to move the item. I'm still 100% behind this project.
Call the question.
If I can
So-
add, if I can briefly add just one additional comment. Many years ago, well before I was on the council, Greensboro City Council supported a grocer coming to the northern end of downtown. And I want to point out how significant that has been for the development of the northern end of downtown, as well as those surrounding communities. If you look at new apartment complexes on the north end of downtown, if you look at other amenities that have come to the northern end of downtown in a similar arrangement as to what would be here on the southern end of downtown, you'll see that it has helped encourage development in our downtown. And so I want to point out that this is also significant in that regard. Oftentimes there's a chicken and the egg type issue where many folks don't want to live in a downtown because they feel like they can't readily access a grocery. And so obviously this addresses that. And again, there are trade-offs, but that's another factor that I think weighs in favor of supporting this proposal. And I congratulate the planning department on getting a grocer of such esteem.
Call the question.
Well, I just want to say, you know, we've been to the dance a couple of times where other developers had come up with master proposals. And I even questioned last time when we were switching, I believe it was to a company who had built things around the belt line, whether or not we were going to find ourselves right back where we were, which was looking for another plan and another developer. And lo and behold, we were. I think we've been through this at least 3 times now. And it's really good to have a firm contract for something that is truly needed. Housing is needed, affordable housing is needed. We know that groceries, fresh groceries are really important to everybody throughout the city of Greensboro. You know, another benefit that this has, not only just for downtown residents and for the neighboring, is having it on Gate City really gives it a higher profile. There is a long way before you will find another grocery store on Gate City Boulevard. And I think that they are going to benefit from people throughout the city shopping there. So I think that this is a very important step, one that we have been trying to do for many, many years. So I congratulate Lidl for coming. Thank you. I hope we can get that timeline a little tighter. People have been waiting a long time. I know the closing could be a year from April. I understand the challenges with the redevelopment and doing the phase 1 and 2 studies. You know, I think it's important that we do this with all haste and look at the parking, because parking is a great issue in downtown, and it is up to the city to provide parking through most of downtown in the CVB. So thank you for being here. We do have a motion and a second, unless there are further comments. Okay, council, please vote. And that passes 9-0. Welcome to the neighborhood. So our next item is I.2, an ordinance amending Chapter 16, Article 9, Division 3 of the Greensboro Code of Ordinances, controlled parking areas. Can we just have a brief description on that?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. This item includes revisions to the controlled parking permit program, which was requested at a previous meeting. This has been tailored to address many of the issues identified by the South Side neighborhood in particular, related to availability of on-street parking. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have, and can confirm that as soon as the item is complete, we will immediately begin the transition to permitting and the permitting process for the South Side neighborhood.
Thank you very much. I know that's come up at a number of prior meetings. I'm glad that it's something that we were able to accomplish. Mrs. Hightower, I know that you've been speaking with the neighbors as well.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Hannah, for addressing the concerns they've had for several years, as a matter of fact. So with the permit, how long exactly will they be allowed to park? Is this a 4-hour permit, or it just says you're a resident and you can park? What does that exactly look like?
I'm happy to answer that question. The permit is based on the same permitting program that we have in other residential permit areas. This one has been tailored to address some of the concerns that were raised. So it includes both the commercial leased areas for permits as well as the residences. And the permit allows a resident who or leaseholder employee that has a permit associated with that vehicle to park and stay as long as they need to.
Okay. And now for them to have that permit, they gotta get their vehicle registered. Is there any type of permitting fee or?
There is no fee for the program today. We do not charge a fee, but we will require some documentation, particularly for the business employees, to ensure that we are maintaining an accurate record and reflection of the permits associated with the individual businesses and residences.
Okay, and there will be signage and all, we'll make sure there's appropriate signage and as well as education, especially to the community who's been asking for this.
Absolutely. We will be immediately reaching out to the neighborhood to explain how to go about receiving the permit, the requirements, the forms, all of that information so that they've got what they need so we can move forward.
Very good. Well, I'm glad we were able to find a solution to this problem because it's been ongoing for many, many years. And hopefully this will satisfy some of the issues that they've been experiencing, particularly our small business owners who do live and play in this particular area. We definitely don't want to be a detriment. So thank you all for getting this done and working it out.
In the comments.
I would move that item, Madam Mayor.
Second.
So moved by Mrs. Hightower, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson. Council, please vote.
May I make a comment?
That passes 9-0. Dr. Wells, yes.
Ms. Hightower beat me to everything tonight. I am so glad for District 2. This has been a problem that we have had for quite a few years, and Councilwoman Boozerwade and I met with these folks about 3 years ago. But I think if you can remember, just a few meetings ago, we addressed it, and I want to thank staff for making those changes. And you know, we just said, well, if the ordinance doesn't allow it, we need to change the ordinance. So I appreciate you all taking care of it because it has been quite some time.
Mary Kay, then Mr. Holston.
Yes, I just wanted to say, I agree with what Dr. Wells said. I know Ms. Hightower has been concerned and working on it as well, but knowing that small businesses especially are always, you know, it's just really hard for them. And if there's no parking near where they are trying to survive, it really, really is something that I'm truly thankful staff has gotten on this and found a solution by changing the ordinance. But, you know, sometimes things like that really need to be done. So knowing how important small businesses are to our community, if we can help them out in any way, as you can see tonight, we can do it. So thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Mr. Holston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also say that after that last meeting that we had, and I also want to thank the city staff. That very next morning, I actually went out and met with the residents and the business owners, the small business owners, and had a chance to actually walk the area and get a real feel, because you never really get a good look at something until you put your boots on the ground. And I'm just happy to say that there's a resolution. I want to thank Kim and her team. And it was just nice to go ahead and have a solution to something that benefits everyone. It benefits Greensboro. We have them down there in businesses, but we didn't have the parking spaces for them. And now they have the parking spaces and they don't have to worry about that anymore. Now it's just about taking care of the business of the small business. And I'm excited about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to say thank you as well. I've been here a long time, and one of the most frustrating things is this for an issue to come up and the council cannot do anything to help the people. And to serve the people is why we're here. Makes me think of that poem. They said it couldn't be done, but I would have chuckled replied, I won't say it can't be done until we've tried. So I praise you for trying and doing. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to item I.3, which is a resolution approving update of the Greensboro Parks and Recreation rules, regulations, and ordinances for the operations of the municipal public parks and recreation areas of the city of Greensboro with amendments effective February 16, 2022.
Move the item. Or-
Second.
So, for the viewing public, what this is doing is actually bringing us in line with new legislation that the state passed down fairly recently. There will be a number of changes to our code of ordinances, and these are basically changing criminal fines to civil fines, similar to what we did during the first COVID by going for civil fines instead of criminal. And so this will be the first in a number. We will see some on our next agenda too. But that is what this is in reference to. And I did have a motion. Was it Mr. Holston? And who was the second? Dr. Wells. And that passes 9-0. That is the end of our printed agenda. Let's do boards and commissions additions. Mrs. Hightower?
I don't have any tonight.
Dr. Wells? Mr. Outling?
None this evening. Thank you.
Mrs. Hoffman? Mrs. Thurm?
None this evening.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I have one name to put in the bank. That's Walter Johnson III. And I'll get you his resume.
Any particular board or commission or just
Parks and
Parks and
Recreation.
Rec? Okay. Mrs. Boozwetter, boards and commissions?
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Mr. Holston, boards and commissions.
Madam Mayor, I do have two. The first is for the Community Sustainability Council. I have Mr. Andrew Randall.
Second.
Well, is this to put him in the data bank or are you placing him on?
Placing him on
Okay,
the CSC, and he's replacing Susan Phillips.
okay. So there is a second by Mrs. Johnson. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes 9-0.
And then I have another, Madam Mayor. It's for the Historic Preservation Committee, Mr. Bert Vanderveen, and he is replacing Mr. Wayne Smith.
Okay, there is a second by Mrs. Boozwetter. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes 9-0. Council comments, Mrs. Johnson?
No, for a change, I don't. Oh. What you were talking about earlier?
No, yeah, what you were talking about as far as.
Yeah, a lot of us over the months have been talking about the Hyatt situation and what the people are having to endure. And I wanted us to think about getting it together at a work session and perhaps coming up with a severe housing crisis grant that would run through the housing, our housing department. We don't have this often, and we probably won't have it often, but when it happens, you know, I'd like for us to be able to at least offer some assistance to our citizens. I know Kim has worked on this situation and others. I know that it's difficult to do when it's private land and that kind of thing. But if we could have it so that if it happened again anywhere in the city to any other community, we could have a motion or a recommendation from the housing department that we grant them a certain amount of money to help move in moving expenses and so forth. This is not completely foreign to the city of Greensboro. I remember there was a business when we were doing a Willow Oaks, and I was the council liaison for Willow Oaks. And there were a couple of businesses that moved, and we assisted them because we had that put in place to move. So I just want us to think about that. Mr. Manager, I'd like for us to discuss that at some a work session, and maybe we can come up with something for that. And I know, Larry, you'll be right there telling us what we can do, how much money we can spend, if any. Thank you.
We do have our work session coming up on the 23rd and 4th, I believe. And I know that housing
That
will
would be a good idea to talk about that then.
you know, housing comes up at all of our work sessions, and obviously we need to talk about the implementation of our housing GSO and how we're going to fund it, and, you know, what a housing bond would look like. I'd also like to get some information by that meeting about the Nussbaum Fund, and if we're still, I believe we're still putting a portion of money aside in our general budget for the Nussbaum Fund. What that looks like. I know that it was pared back a little bit a few years ago, and some of that money was redeployed to economic development. But I think it's important to look at the level that we are funding housing with and what that annual set aside, for lack of a better word. I think we had the Nussbaum Fund, we had transportation, and I believe there was one other fund that we really need to take a look at during this retreat. I usually speak last, but Mayor Pro Tem has brought up a couple of things. You know, next week, the reassessments are going to go out, I believe, and people will find out what their houses are worth. And, you know, certainly from the last reassessment, property values have gone up, and, you know, the city will be looking, to adjust a tax rate. I don't believe that people should panic when they see the tax bills and then multiply it by the current tax rate. It will certainly be adjusted, and I imagine that will come up at our work session also. It certainly should, because I think that is a high priority on what that tax rate looks like, though I know that we can't guarantee anything until we pass a budget. But we can certainly talk about the impact of, a revenue neutral tax rate, what something like that would look like. So I hope that is something that we'll look at shortly and be able to get the information out to our taxpayers, both resident and commercial taxpayers, because I think they're going to take a look at that bill and be a bit surprised. If they have a concern regarding the value, that needs to be addressed to the county, since it's actually the county who does the evaluations and sets the tax value. So there is a certain time period where people can appeal their evaluations, and I'm sure that will be included in the letter, which will go out by the county. It won't come out by the city. Mrs. Abuzawaiter?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know that you and Mr. Holston and I were at the ribbon cutting grand opening of a small business yesterday in Greensboro. And I know we're all supportive of small business. It's called Crystal Jewelers on West Wendover. And I know there's some wonderful jewelry shops in Greensboro, but I also know that we can welcome more. So if anyone is is looking for some fine jewelry, they also have some very reasonably priced selection, but just wanted people to support small business. Second thing I have is, I've heard some really good things about the listening sessions that the city manager has been doing and his learning more about Greensboro and about the community. So wanted to express that. I have heard a lot of good comments. I've been watching most of them online, but He's done a very good job with that, and I know that the community is grateful. They don't always speak up, but I do know the community has been grateful for that, so thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Holston.
I want to send the condolences to the family of Dr. Gerald Truesdale, who passed on February 5th. Community leader, a philanthropist, and member of many, many civic organizations, and look forward to the opportunity to honoring his life from the council in the future, in the very near future, and send our condolences to his wife Althea and his son Gerard and his daughter Jessica. Also want to say thank you to Executive Director Melanie Neal at the Guilford Metro 911. Councilwoman Wells and I had an opportunity to tour that facility back on February 3rd and was really impressed with the facility itself. I had not been previously and was really impressed with the facility and the staff and the information they provided and the services that they provide. And the long shifts and the very good service. So we really appreciate them, and also want to recognize that they did receive their reaccreditation of the IAED and the ACE. And so really proud of the work they're doing for public safety here in Greensboro. And then also Councilwoman Boozewed, thank you for the notice about the small business. I know we shared there that we always hear about the Toyotas and the Zooms and the LTs and the Publics, where they bring in thousands of jobs and they're pouring in hundreds of millions of dollars in investment. But we always have to remember that small business does represent 98% of the business here in Greensboro. Small business is the backbone. The others are great and very much appreciated, but small business is the backbone. And to see Crystal Jewelers open up and launch their jewelry store, but at the same time, they were handing out checks to the Albee Garden Project and also the Service Center in the amounts of $5,000. This is a new business launching, handing out $10,000 to the community because they want to be and they are a part of this community, and giving back was so special. So congratulations to Crystal Jewelers. I also want to say thank you to the Black Girls Vote and NAACP chapters over at NCA&T for inviting me to their Paying It Forward, honoring Black women in politics. It was just very exciting to see the activation and the engagement of our youth, those who really want to get involved in our community. Definitely pointed them towards the opportunities within the city of Greensboro, the boards and commissions, so that they know that it's okay to get engaged. Just because you're in school and you're learning doesn't mean you can't be engaged. And it's a great opportunity for them to network and build relationships and get to know more about what's going on within the city. And then I also want to say thank you to Chair Gaines over at the Sustainability Council, as they had a very robust conversation yesterday about sustainability and where the city is going, looking at all the growth opportunities, but also looking at how we can build this thing to scale. The Toyota plant coming in with its batteries, it just naturally talks about sustainability. But how else and where else can we do it? I did make one appointment to that commission today, and I know that they're down 2 still. And so they have a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of engagement for them to get going. So really proud of the work they're doing there. And Madam Mayor, you did appoint me as the liaison to the War Memorial Commission. Unfortunately, that meeting was at the same time as the funeral for Commissioner Carolyn Coleman, so I did not make that meeting in full. And so I don't have any updates this meeting, but I plan to have some after we have the minutes come out. And last but not least, I'm sorry, I'm taking up too much time here. I want to thank Councilwomen Hightower and Wells for the invitation to their town hall. District 1, District 2, I think, I won't steal your thunder. I'll just simply say, thank you for the invitation. Was very happy and very proud to be there, and it was a great discussion.
It was.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Mrs. Thurm.
Thank you. I do have a couple of items. First off, I'd like to thank Field Ops, GDOT, and several others for really being responsive. I've had a number of resident issues come up in the past 2 weeks, more so than usual. And boy, everything that I have communicated with the assistant city managers about, they have turned it around in just unbelievable time. And the residents are thrilled, and I appreciate their help. Also, a special thanks to Assistant City Manager Davis. Holden Farms called me today to thank me for their ability to meet tonight as a group for the first time in over 2 years for their community watch. And they really appreciate your assistance with that. While I'm talking about Holden Farms, however, they have had a problem with AT&T fiber optic coming into their neighborhood. And this isn't the first time I've heard from residents about folks coming in to lay fiber optic cable. The residents have not received any notification. They just wake up to people and heavy equipment tearing up their yards. And it was extremely concerning for the group in Holden Farms. And I'd like to see what our options are. And I'd like to challenge us to come up with some creative options. We obviously can't count on these cable companies coming in and notifying residents. They sort of kind of do sometimes, but they don't overall. But the residents own this property and it's their home, and to have people wandering their yards and people digging up their yards without any warning just isn't right and isn't fair. So I don't know whether we can set something up where we find out who's coming into the neighborhoods and who's laying cable, and we include notifications every month in maybe our water bill newsletter that, hey, this project is coming on, because we know those residents get their water bills. I'd like to see us come up with some creative ideas on how we can make sure that our residents know what's going on and what's coming to their neighborhoods. So just as a challenge, as a question, if you all could put your heads together and see if you can come up with any great solutions there, I'd appreciate it. Also, just as a heads up for District 5, we do have our first listening session tomorrow at noon. That's at Griffin Recreation Center. And then we have the second listening session, March 9th at 6 p.m. at Leonard Rec Center, just off of Ballinger. If you're planning on coming to that Ballinger Road, Leonard Rec Center, just remember that there is a detour there and that the bridge is closed. And so you'll have to drive around a little bit, leave yourself some time. One last thing, participatory budgeting. The lines are open for recommending projects, and please go ahead and put in your projects. You can go to pbgreensboro.com to put in project ideas. And a huge shout out and thank you to Ms. Soul, who has helped us finally get the project for the Guilford College area in process. The sign looks great. The residents are thrilled. Got a little back order on the granite that needs to be done, needs to come in. But we are very, very excited. And the Guilford Alliance is just thrilled with the progress and the project as it's turned out. So thank you, Kim. I know it's been quite the ride to get this done, but it's very much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Hoffman?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Hugh, I appreciate your mentioning Dr. Truesdale and his contributions to the city. The Truesdales live not far from me in Starmount in District 4. So that's a real loss to the city, of course. And Councilwoman Thurman, thanks for mentioning, we all probably get lots of calls about things that go on in the city that are unexpected by our citizens in various neighborhoods. I think it was AT&T laying cable along New Garden Road last year that I got a number of calls about. And again, I've had two issues in Sunset Hills just with the loose leaf pickup situation within the last week, and field services responded to those immediately. One of them, I just forwarded the email to Julio early this morning, and I had and answered our citizens email as well, and said, we were going to get on top of this quickly. And I asked him to let me know, when it was taken care of. I had an email back from our citizen in Sunset Hills within an hour saying, you must have worked your magic. Well, I didn't work any magic, but our field services department did. So I really appreciate that. And then finally, our city manager had his listening session at noon today in one of our libraries in District 4, Kathleen Clay Edwards Library. And, we had a nice group actually present in the community room there. And I expect that for our 6 o'clock meeting in a few weeks that we can fill that room. And Dr. Wells came today, and I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Outling.
Yes, thank you. Briefly revisiting the topic of property tax reassessments. As probably almost everyone is aware, property across the country is more valuable. That will certainly be the case in Greensboro. And the taxes that property owners pay as a result will be higher as a general matter in all likelihood than they have paid in the past. There are many in our community that can afford to pay more taxes. Regrettably, there are many also in our community who cannot afford to pay more in taxes, especially low-income individuals who are seniors. Prior to COVID, probably 2 years ago, Councilwoman Wells and Councilwoman Hightower and I explored this topic, recognizing that there's a possibility that property tax increases with reassessments could really do detrimental effect to low-income seniors. Staff at the time put together some preliminary analysis and numbers on the topic for the city perhaps to emulate a program that exists elsewhere, including in Charlotte, where for low-income seniors, their property taxes stay flat. Essentially, the city foregoing collecting property taxes that they otherwise could collect. Allowing low-income seniors and perhaps others to stay in their homes, allowing for there not to be what's often termed gentrification, where people can't afford to live in their homes because the values have increased. And so hopefully we can address that need in our community, especially as we see the reassessed values. And I would respectfully ask, consistent with the mayor's remarks earlier, that this be hopefully with the mayor's consent and with Mr. Manager's consent on a work session agenda for the 23rd to look at the analysis that staff previously put together that hopefully can be updated. And so the council can explore whether or not to adopt a program similar to that of Charlotte and other communities looking to assist low-income seniors.
Thank you. Dr. Wells.
We had a pretty busy week. Last week on Tuesday, we had the listening session with our new city manager at the Smith Adult Recreation Center, and folks came, and that was the first one, and was very enlightening. And then I think it was Wednesday, the mayor and Councilwoman Hightower and Abuzuweda came over to Phillips Avenue to the Second Harvest Food Distribution Center And they received a generous check from Bank of America. And while we were there, we got a chance to really look at the shopping center. And we saw some things we didn't like about the way it looked. The trash in the back of one of the stores. And so we reported it, and I want to thank field ops and all the other departments, the fire department, and all of them got involved right away, and we got it cleaned up. And that's something that we are going to be working on. We've got to do a little bit more with that. And I'm checking on an ordinance if we have to make some changes to it or something, maybe we can, to help clean up District 1 and District 2. The other thing is I want to thank all of you who participated in the combined District 1 and District 2 town hall that we had last Thursday night. We had 110 people that attended on Zoom, it was really an outstanding. The staff members, and I know they wanted to come to hear and meet the new city manager, but then too, it was a first. And Councilwoman Hightower said, this is a first for us to be together. But we realize that we have the same concerns in District 1 and District 2. So we'll be working to bring about some changes. But thanks to all the staff members that helped us to pull it together. I guess that's all I have to say tonight.
Mrs. Hightower?
Oh, you saved the best for last.
No, I still have a comment.
Oh, you too late. Too late. You already talked. You already used your points.
I get to jump in.
But yeah, I did want to say, Councilwoman Thurm, that there is a utility contact in our engineering and inspection department. So, because I have had to use him as the Woodley subdivision has had the same issues with AT&T and Piedmont natural gas. And so they are to notify him whenever they're coming into those neighborhoods, but they don't. Oftentimes they do not. And so we have to hold them accountable for that. I did want to say condolences to our community. We've just lost some major hitters. While every death is a sad death, those that you interact with daily or are prominent, when they leave you, and they leave a gaping hole in the community. And so we are still mourning the loss of some very, very, very impactful people that have done a lot in this community. And they now are resting with the ancestors. They've gone into the ages. And so they now are history, but they will always be in our hearts and in our minds forever. And so this community has suffered that great loss, and we will never ever forget those that we have lost. I also want to say we had a great listening session last Wednesday, I believe, at Barber Park. And I was told that we had some of the most greater turnout. So District 1 always shows up and shows out than some of the listening sessions. So I'm looking forward to the next one, February 22nd at 6:30, and we're going to be at 6 o'clock. We're going to be at Brown Recreation Center over further out southeast. So I hope that those who didn't get an opportunity to come on last week at noon will come out and meet our city manager and hear all the great things and ideas that he has as we move the city forward. So I'm excited about that. I also wanted to briefly mention Golden. This is in your district again, sorry. But tomorrow at 6:30, there will be a virtual naming of the Harold L. Martin Senior Engineering Research and Innovation Complex. As you know, that building is on the corner of East Market and Dudley Street. And then the next day at 11 a.m. on Thursday, there will be the ribbon cutting for the Eric Building. And so that's a great positive thing happening in East Greensboro that we'll all want to celebrate with. And that building being named after Chancellor Martin as well. Mr. City Manager, I appreciate you bringing up work sessions. I've been waiting on a work session about MWBE for quite a few months now. So if you could see that we have that, I know it's time to put out the RFP for the disparity study again as we look at the performances. But I would certainly love to hear from that area and what the performances are looking like, as well as hear from Griffin and Strong, because they're the ones that did the previous one. So I would appreciate having that. And I think that we certainly do need to have more work sessions because it's good to be in the know. I don't like being uninformed when people contact you about certain issues. We need to definitely be informed about that. So if you could see that we do that more often, I would appreciate it. And finally, I have an issue that I think we really need to address. As Goldie said, districts 1 and 2 seem to have a lot of issues in common. And whether that's the recycling and that doesn't happen the way it should in District 1, whether it's trash cans staying on the streets all week, all those things affect neighborhoods and the vitality of our neighborhoods. But one of the things that really is troublesome is that houses can stay boarded up indefinitely. Boarded up houses cause crime and deterioration in a community. And we need to change the ordinance to stop allowing houses to be boarded up indefinitely. They either need to be boarded up for a period of time, whether that's a year, and then we need to look at if that person is not doing anything with that property, how either that property can be going into doing land banking, which we have been talking about looking at land banking, because we've got so many houses that are vacant, boarded up. We are cutting the grass. We are spending thousands of dollars on these properties that could get back into rotation, become tax paying, as well as a resident for someone, either rental or home ownership. Properties that have unpaid taxes for 10 and 12 and 15 years, and they're just sitting there. We need to revamp the ordinance for those boarded up properties to get those addressed. And those properties are in District 1 and 2. I mean, I know other districts have them, but I can basically tell you every street that they're sitting on. And there's some boarded up house that's sitting in the middle of other nice houses that impacts their property values and causes concerns. So I would really like for us to look at that, work with the housing city attorney to see how we can revamp that ordinance. Make that change.
Sharon, I'd say that some of those houses are probably on the the demolition list. And, you know, they seem to languish when they get there. We don't have the budget to actually go in and take those houses down. And I think there is some expectation to the neighborhood that when the house has gone through the process and it makes it to the demo list, that there's going to be some movement, and they sit there for years. There's a house in Irving Park that has been on the demo list for a while, and they were happy once it was put on the list, but now they're like, well, what's going to happen? It's not being fixed up, and it's just sitting there, and it's on the demo list. So
right, but we can change that too, because even though it's on the demo list,
yeah,
we had we put an ordinance out there to repair. And
Right.
so we need to be utilizing that ordinance to repair, and we need to be working with the contractors, the smaller minority contractors in our receivership part that we came out of.
No,
a
I
housing
understand all that. They went
And-
through the system and now they're,
But what I'm saying
Yes.
is, this is what we got to start doing.
Yeah.
Because just sitting on a demo list,
Mhm.
they're still sitting in the neighborhood, but nothing happened.
I'm agreeing with you. Yes.
And so, yeah, we have to go ahead on and start to move the needle
Yes.
as well with
Yes.
those, even though they're sitting, some, but not all are sitting on the demo list. And then some are just languishing out there, either taxes, the tax department could foreclose, but I've been, I've heard some disturbing things of, well, the value, the amount to foreclose is not worth the value of the home. So let's get that property. Let's find a way to get that home through land trust, land banking. And we develop a plan to be able to do that, because just talking about it really doesn't help this community. You cannot bring things like a Lidl to an area and beautify when you go around the corner and
you see it right down the street.
Right.
Yes.
So, yes,
I'd like, while we're talking about boarded up, I'd like to include commercial boarded up buildings that have been boarded up for quite some time as well, not just residences.
We were talking about work sessions, and I've mentioned to the city manager and his team some other things that we need to get on a work session. And I know that we've got the retreat coming up, so it's tough to do a work session right before the retreat, but I really feel it's very important that we talk about water and sewer extensions, because with Boom and with Toyota, there are a lot of developers, especially residential developers, that feel we're going to run water and sewer way beyond our service area. And I think we need to set realistic expectations on what that is and why we ran the water and sewer out to the mega site, and what we expect as far as residential versus industrial and commercial. And so I think it's important we do that. We also need an update on public safety, kind of close out where we were last year, and what can we do this year based on trends and with the budget coming up. And then something that I've been working on for a while is the short-term rentals. And we've worked with a number of stakeholders. There was a series of 4 meetings. There is a draft for us to look at. We need a work session on that, because we've heard that short-term rentals can become an issue. So we need to have some sort of an ordinance. Regarding the tax relief, I believe that tax relief is important also. The county does have, which applies to the city as well, an elderly tax rebate, so to say, where they can lower taxes. And they also have a veterans tax relief. And I've worked with 2 people very recently on getting the tax exemptions from the elderly. And the county system is extremely easy, and it results in just about half of their taxes are abated. So I think it's important for us to also consider what the county already has in place and if we're utilizing it. I worked with one woman who had an issue because she had put her home into an estate. And this was somebody who qualified for the tax relief under the elderly exemption, but because it was put into a trust, it was disallowed. We need to work with the county where people who are really working on their estate and putting things in trust, that they get the same consideration as somebody who just has it in their name. So I would also like to look at what the county already offers for our taxpayers and what that impact is. And certainly if there's a way that we can expand it, I would certainly, consider that. But we also have to make sure that people are taking advantages of tax relief that is already on the books. So, if we could have that be a part of that general conversation as well. Mr. City Manager?
In that regard, if I could make a request to Mr. Davis and staff to share the information that was collected previously, because I know considerable thought was given to that point as well as the way in which it would be administered. And so since it appears we'll have a number of work sessions with a number of excellent topics, it might be helpful to get that information to the council sooner to make that work session more efficient to address that point.
That would be helpful because it seems like many of us didn't get that information. So it would be good to be able to base on what's already available.
Okay, got to remember that. But thank you very much. You've all made references to the upcoming retreat or council strategy session. That's of course different from your regular work session. That will be half day on March 23rd and full day on March 24th. We will make sure that we send that information out officially, but I'm just letting you know now to be aware that we are looking at half day from 1:30 p.m., I believe, on the 23rd, and then full day on the 24th. We've developed some preliminary agenda items. We'll kind of circulating them right now, and then we'll share this with you later on. The listening sessions, you've also made references to those. So far, we've done 4. Covering districts 1 through 4. I think we'll be in district 5 tomorrow. So by tomorrow, we'll have covered 5 council districts. And then next week, we're going to start all over again with districts 1 and 2 in the evenings. So once again, I'm encouraging our residents to participate in person or virtually. At the same time, we actually kicked off our community survey today. Again, like I mentioned earlier, there are people who might not be able to participate in the listening sessions. And we want to make sure that we are reaching out to them. And so we kicked that off today. And when we come back to you in March, we'll be able to have information in terms of survey outcomes, as well as the summary of the listening sessions. So together we can compare them and also make sure that we are in alignment with some of your priorities that you've had before, but definitely making sure that we are pursuing and advancing goals that are important to you and your constituents over the next several months. I've made notes we've heard from you with regards to the March 23rd work session. We'll be working through that, and then we'll see you at that time. Thank you very much.
Will we be doing that at the Hall of Champions, or is it to be determined?
Yes, I think that, Larry?
Okay, thank you. Mr. City Attorney?
I have none. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? Okay, moved by Mrs. Johnson, seconded by Mr. Buzawater. All in favor, say aye.